And that being said, yes, it saves us a lot of money in that maintenance when it comes, especially when it comes to labor costs. Now, there's a lot of stuff they can't do, and of course, they're also short labor, and sometimes the buses just have to get fixed, and we can't wait a month for something to happen. But in general, yes, and anytime that we can use them, we do so, and hopefully help bring down our maintenance costs for buses.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Duplessis, were you putting your hand up?
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that the ridership numbers are increased. I know that was kind of the big kind of concern going back a few years ago of not seeing a whole lot of movement on that. But I think that's probably in part due to the growing, changing population. That being considered, what is the rates and fares of the bus, and obviously the intention is to keep it accessible. But has that been reviewed anytime recently, or where are we at with kind of a review of fares?
Yes. So to answer your question, Councillor Duplessis, ridership is up, as I said, across the board. From last year to this year, we're seeing anywhere from a 35 to a 50% increase in ridership. Now, of course, a lot of that had to do with the pandemic, and just people weren't driving the bus and they weren't doing it. But these numbers are even up from pre-pandemic, which is great to see, and hopefully we're going to see those continue to increase. As it's an essential service, we really don't want to raise fares. That's our very last step. I've taken some looks at some of the numbers, and I have some of our other programs that we have. I've increased some of those prices a little bit, but the general ridership fare is not something that we really want to increase. Currently, it's at $3 a ride, and we kind of want to keep it around there. It's pretty standard, even for bigger cities, for it to be that much.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Oh, Councillor Summers.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the presentation, and congratulations on accepting your new role there recently as well, Mr. Babineau. My question, I'm not sure how much of it you can necessarily disclose, but you do have a projection for an increase under charters on your budget here, and I'm just wondering, is that something that are we speculating that we're going to have an increase, or do we have something in the hopper, I guess is the way I would put it, because it's obviously a positive, and Councillor Duplessis beat me to it with the suggestion about potentially increasing fares, but I can understand where we don't want to do that. But just on the charters, I guess, is there anything you could share with us on that?
Sure, Councillor Summers, I can address that in detail if you'd like. But so this year we did see right near the end of spring coming into summer, and again, this was before I was there, but looking back at the numbers and the charters, it started to pick up, and we started booking more and more local charters. A lot of weddings, a lot of local events, which are great. Keeps our fuel costs down, which helps our bottom line with the charters. And we started branching out and expanding just a little bit outside the city. If people want city weddings and that sort of stuff, event that happens out, we're more than happy to do that. Coming into the new year, we are actually raising our charter prices. They haven't changed in 5 or 6 years. And really, if you want a large charter in Miramichi, we are the only people around. So, you know, there's an increase in everything else, including fuel costs. And so a small increase in the charter cost is not out of the ordinary, and I think the market can more than bear that. So that's one of the reasons why, but also, as I said, we're just seeing more and more. We have lots of interest in out of town that we're looking at. Once the fleet is capable of doing that, we'd love to return to making trips to Moncton, making trips to Fredericton, that sort of stuff. So, and that's where most of that revenue is going to come from.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. I would just comment from the chair, Mr. Babineau, your slide about the proportion of revenues that's proposed to come from city, the city subsidy is really helpful, because it reminds us that although there's an increase in operating subsidy proposed here on the table, that it's not necessarily increasing the overall percentage that the city contributes to the revenue or the budget. And I know when we looked at this a few years ago, it's worth noting that at the time, and we're still at the same level, we were the least subsidized by city revenue of the 4 transit systems in existence in New Brunswick. And so I also, like, you know, when I think about it, perhaps there should have been an escalator in the city subsidy, you know, year over year, but to think that you've had the same amount for 5 years and continue to deliver a service, and in many cases an enhanced service without an increase, it's really remarkable from my perspective, and also acknowledging that the increased importance of transit in the community. And although we had, you know, the COVID, I'm pleased that the numbers are getting back to where they were beforehand. So I guess just to say from my perspective, it's in line, and it's about a 20-something% increase, which is what we're seeing across the board in, you know, when we did the snowplow contracts a couple of weeks ago and other services as well. So thank you for the proposal, and I would also want to make note that I understand you did this in part, you know, in collaboration. You got some guidance from the treasurer and from Director McTavish, who is our city staff transit advisor. So good that, you know, we're working collaboratively on those things, and as we've mentioned, we want to do that as we get into the strat plan and other things. So anyway, thank you for the information, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of those points. So that's it from me. Yeah, sure, Councillor. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. You mentioned service level being consistent. I know we've heard a lot of feedback from the community of the need to increase service level, specifically to post 7 p.m., specifically to the hospital. I'm just wondering if, like, is there any pivot room, or I know the viability of that's been in question, but what's your take on that, and is that viable potentially, and do we look to do that? Is there any wiggle room to expand service specifically there once a budget is approved and the kind of the bus is in motion, if you will?
That's a fantastic question, and it's number 1 on my list for the new year once that comes through. And yes, there is a little bit of wiggle room with the current budget. With the, and as Mr. Mayor said, the biggest thing, we have a strat plan in place. We have a company going to help us with a strategic plan moving forward, and that is one of their top agendas. Is where is our serviceable area? What's our serviceable time? How much can we expand those? And yeah, the biggest feedback I got from any of the public events that we've gone to are, can we get later service? Like, you know, I don't get off work till 9 o'clock. How can I get service? And yeah, we have some plans in place to do some pilot programs once we've talked with the company helping us with our strat plan to see if we can run that for a few months and see how it works out. Hopefully, how we want it to work is that the increase in ridership will help, the revenue in that will help cover that extra cost of running the buses those extra nights.
Yeah. Okay, no, it's good to hear. Appreciate it.
Great. So seeing nothing further, thank you for the presentation again, Mr. Babineau, and we're really, you know, glad to have you on board and looking forward to going through that strategic planning exercise. We know council will be consulted through that too, and we'll build a plan together for the future of transit. And there are no motions required on this tonight, so this is just tabled for council to consider through the regular budget process. So thank you
very much.
Thank you.
So that is the only delegation item this evening. So we now move into the management report items on the agenda. And the first is a series of motions relating to some reserve transfers. Do we have a member of council willing to make these motions? Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Your Worship. Proposed motion 1. I move that the City of Miramichi transfer $111,000 from the General Operating Fund to the General Capital Reserve Fund.
Seconded by Councillor Summers. On the question, I would just maybe ask from the chair for an explanation from the treasurer regarding why these motions are required.
So, Your Worship, so these transfers pertain to the 2021 and the 2022 budgets, and at the time that the budgets were approved, there were amounts designated to come from reserve and some going into reserve. And even though the budgets were approved by motion of council, we still require motion of council anytime funds are transferred in or out of reserve. So it's more of a red tape, really, to.
Okay, thank you. So we do have the motions on the floor. Are there any other questions or comments on the question? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Councillor, the second motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the City of Miramichi transfer $340,500 from the General Operating Reserve Fund to the General Operating Fund.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Arsenault on the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The third, Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the City of Miramichi transfer $150,000 from the Utility Operating Reserve to the Utility Operating Fund.
Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Summers on the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And the fourth, Councillor.
I move that the City of Miramichi transfer $584,200 from the General Reserve Fund to the General Operating Fund.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor King on the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Concludes the four motions. Thank you. So we now move on to the second item, which is regarding the Affordable Housing Incentive Program. Do I have a member of council willing to make that motion? Councillor Ross Robinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the city issue a letter of offer to 714007 NB Limited for a contribution of $100,000 for the creation of a multi-unit affordable housing residential units as outlined in, that's a secret, Management Report Number ED&T 2022-11.
Thank you. Good work on the fly. That's correct, Madam Chair. Yeah, perfect. And a seconder for the motion, Councillor King on the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And a motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor Arsenault, seconded by Councillor Duplessis. On the question, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So the meeting is adjourned. So we will move into, I guess, with that, it is 6:21, and we'll move into our council in committee meeting for October 11th, 2022. Once again, I'll call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to please record the attendance. And I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda, please. Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Ross Robinson. On the question, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Are there any conflicts of interest this evening? Seeing none, we'll move into our agenda. The first item is regarding trucking of winter road salt. Just to set this up, is that Director Shanahan is away? Mr.
Yeah, this is an annual item. It's the trucking part of the winter road salt acquisition. It's scheduled for next Tuesday's regular council meeting, and here tonight to see if there's any information not contained in the report that council would like, and to ask that you send it up to the next council meeting for a vote.
Okay, great. Maybe just a question from the chair, Mr. Noel, to Director Rao, or if the answer's not available, maybe we could have it as it would go up. So this mentions that it would be, the proposed price is $25.90 a ton, and that the budget allocated is about $190,000. So would we have, it's $1,500. So just what's the math on that? Like, is it within the proposed budget, or are we proposing that it's over budget?
To your worship, I guess just quick math is about $38,000 just for the trucking part, and then the other part would be the purchase of the salt separately, from I guess Nutrien there, the mine down in Sussex. So I don't see any reason why it would be over budget. The department does manage in it accordingly, but based on the budget, it would go over based on winter conditions more than anything. I guess if that at that time. That it does come on for next week, so perhaps the director can comment a little farther, but I do anticipate they're usually within budget every year, so,
Yeah.
they manage it accordingly, I guess. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Just
Yeah.
usually if we anticipate things are going to be over budget, at this point, they're usually flagged for us in advance. So just if that is the case, but if it's not, then we'll get that confirmed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll review it with the director and maybe get it added.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of council? Seeing none, so the proposal is that this would come to the regular council meeting next week. So is there a member of council willing to make the motion to send this up? Councillor Arsenault, seconded by Councillor Ross Robinson. On the question, is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, the motion is to send this up. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So motion passes. And next we have a presentation on asset management. So I guess we'll turn it for as well.
Within budget, we're going to take it right to council if there is no meeting tonight. And that is only happens if you're within budget. If you're within, it's the way, right? And it would have went straight to. We are.
Rao and
Thank you very
your
much.
colleague from the department.
Yeah, so the next phase of our asset management is status of infrastructure, state of the infrastructure. So just give you an overview where we are in our asset management. You can see where we just adopted our asset management policy. We have a roadmap that's kind of been done 6 months ago. So right now we got our asset management policy passed. Then we're moving into the next 1 to 2 years here. We got all kinds of issues we want to address. The asset management plan is the next thing. Hopefully before the end of the year is our goal. We work with our consultant on that. And then we get into all kinds of other things. How long-term funding needs, disposal policies, things like that. And then you can see as the bubble grows, we got a 3 to 5 year plan in the blue bubble there on the outside, and then a longer-term plan way down the road. So asset management is not a finite process. It ever evolves as we move forward. And what we want to talk about today is just some quick graphs on our assets here. You can start with the water system and give you an overview of it and the condition of it. As you can see here, we have about $222 million worth of assets. That's the replacement value as of today. And about that's where this comes from. They're in poor condition. These are based on age. So as we move forward, we will these are just draft numbers right now. And, we'll better define them as we move forward as well, too. But right now, they're based on age. As you can see, moving over to sanitary, we have $270 million worth of sanitary infrastructure, and about $50 million are very poor condition. So as we move forward, we'll come up with a plan of how to deal with these. Transportation, which is our road network, you can see, it's about $109 million worth. At this current rate, we're doing about $2.5 million a year. So, just quick math, going to take, I guess, quite a long time to get all those roads done. So 40 years to do all our roads. So it gives you, strictly using that, thoughts, we need to put some more money into our roads, I guess. And about 20 million of that are in very poor condition. But on the flip side, we do have quite a bit that are in fair, good to very good condition. So we work at our process over a number of years to try to keep our high volume roads, good to very good. So, given this graph, I think we've been pretty successful at that. Moving into storm sewer, most of storm sewer is not that old, so you can see on the graph here, there's not too much that are in very poor condition. Moving into facilities, here's where it gets interesting. Our facilities are a big concern here. This represents, our rec facilities. Police station's right behind our rec facilities as well, too. It's in the very poor condition. So you could see that of the 145 million, 63 or, about 40-some% are in very poor condition. As we all know, I guess, multiplex is in the building itself is in the $45-50 million range, I guess, or, give you an idea. So that's where the bulk of that very poor comes from. Land improvements, this is parks, trails, sports fields, etc., splash pad, skates park. We've done a lot of investing over the relatively, in the last few years, so you can see that a lot of them are in very good condition and very few in very poor. And our fleet, not too bad a shape, about $18 million our fleet is. We've been nursing the ones that are very poor based on age. However, we've been nursing them along, keeping them in the fleet and getting some additional years of life out of them. So, we've been, it's pretty linear there, that graph. So that's what that's what it should be, I guess, more linear and almost, not one-sided like the facilities on one side or the other. So in summary, the city has approximately $885 million worth of assets. The water and sewer make up the bulk of that, just under $500 million. Transportation and stormwater, about $200 million. So I guess we want to do this in preparation of the budget just to give council, I guess, an idea of, where our assets are, what they're worth, and what the condition is, and where we see our dollars, probably should be spent, I guess, from our chair here. So, yeah, willing to entertain any questions if anybody has any questions, but just give you a snapshot of where we are right now. Thank you.
Councillor Ross Robinson.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Director Rao, for that, which is no secret. I've been banging the asset management drum loudly since 2016. I find some of this a little shocking. Just the amount of stuff that's written in red, I suppose. It's no big surprise, but the sticker value is kind of rough. Anyway, I thank you for that. I don't really have any questions. I just wanted to make the comment that we've got a lot of work ahead of us, and with a recession well on its way, I think we have to be very mindful for the next number of years to make sure we can stay ahead of this.
Yeah, I'll take a moment to offer a couple comments too, and I agree with Councillor Ross Robinson. This is something that has been at the table and council's been supportive of for several years now, at least since the class of 16 came in. And I was talking with the manager this morning, and I said, I don't think it's not going to be a surprise to me that a lot of our assets are in bad shape. I think you can tell that when you're driving around, but it is helpful to quantify it, which allows you to then put forward a plan. And the red bar that stands out to me certainly is on the facility side. And I would want to draw attention to that, as you mentioned, Director Rao, that this once again shows in a data-driven way the importance and urgency of having a new centralized recreation facility in the community. We've been banging that drum for quite a while too, and hoping that our colleagues in Fredericton and Ottawa will listen. And yet, once again, we can see on paper the desperate shape of the current rec facilities, and thus the need to replace them with one new centralized facility. So I wanted to certainly point that out. I did have one question, Director Rao, which was on the first slide, where sort of each of the circles is denoted with a number of years, to the point that we've been at this, or you've been at this, and council's been supportive of it since 2016. So we're really 5 years in now. Are these numbers like what we expect years from today, or is the 1 to 2 years like, okay, well, that was 2017, 2018, the blue, that's where we are now, or are these like years from today?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. These are years from today.
Okay.
So while we've been in, 5 years or 6 years or so, we kind of stalled out, I guess, for a number of years. we really, I guess, ramped up once we hired Tammy Allison here, Asset Management Coordinator, who's here today, really to drive all this stuff. You know, there's a lot of other duties on everybody's plates where you can see all these issues here in the next number of years that need to be looked at and done. I can tell you the sheer volume of information that she's processed here in the last, you know, the 6 months or 4 to 5 months that she's been here is really really great to see. So it certainly was a need, and glad council supported it, and you can see all the work that needs to be moved forward. So yeah, it's yeah, like I said, it never ends. It's just going to continue to evolve. So it's you know, thanks for the support, I guess, council.
You're welcome. And I guess the final thing I'd sort of note with some degree of surprise is I'm not surprised by the very poor red bar when it comes to roads, but I'm pleasantly surprised that the largest bar in the road column is very good.
Yeah.
And I think that would also speak to, you know, your management and prioritization over the last few years, and council having doubled and then increased again the amount annually that we put into roads. And I think that's the purpose of asset management, is understanding where those levels need to be as we always hope to achieve sustainability.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, and my final comment is always the that we need not assume that we need to replace it all. So there may be assets, and I know that's part of the process of identifying that maybe we have too much of something or we can let some things go. But this is the first time we've had Ms. Allison with us, so I'd like to make the comment in her presence. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation, Director. The situation fiscally is daunting. I do concur with the sentiments expressed by my colleagues. However, there is good news, I think, in terms of the way our city administration and thus far council and mayor have tried to be fair in terms of being equitable with distribution of funding throughout the city for these various files. And it's like I told one citizen who expressed a concern to me specifically regarding infrastructure involving roads. Fairness isn't necessarily what everybody wants. Fairness is what everybody needs. And what people need is to be treated fairly and with respect and listened to. I truly believe that the strategy taken by the city administration by being equitable in terms of partially completing those roads left traveled, so to speak, and going back and finishing them at a later date is indeed being fair. It's being respectful, it's listening to people's needs, and it's also being equitable. And that's exactly what we've done. And I look forward to seeing that continued in the next year. I know that several colleagues around the table have expressed concerns about some of the outlying areas of the city. And I, too, have expressed those concerns. And I really do believe that thus far, up to this point, we've done a great job in doing that, especially given the fiscal reality that we're currently facing. Second point on facilities. To echo the mayor's sentiments, this is a critical partnership. The development of recreational facilities and infrastructure within the city, particularly the multiplex, is a critical file in the evolution culturally, demographically, and in every sense of the city of Miramichi moving forward. And I publicly call upon the provincial government, especially given that we have 3 local MNAs on caucus, on Miramichi caucus on the side of government, to come through for us fiscally, to support us, to be viable partners moving forward in bringing this multiplex file finally to reality. As we say locally, let's get her done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Other questions or comments from members of council? Excellent. Well, thank you for the update. I know that I apologize, Councillor Duplessis.
Just a little bit of clarity on the facilities one. So are we to understand, and again, the big kind of elephant in the room is obviously the multiplex, the recreation facility. So is that like apples and oranges kind of thing of like the cost to build these facilities as we see in front of us versus the replacement cost? Because it doesn't like $63 million to replace what I'm hearing of a rec facilities and a police station that's in tough shape. Is that apples and apples, or is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, Councillor Duplessis. So what we've done is, the last few months here has gone through all our facilities and come up with a real number of replacement, okay? So we know what, we have an estimate on the multiplex, and so we kind of use that as a guide to come up with a value for the Golden Hawk, the replacement for that, and the LBA and things like that. And, you know, so they add up to the 45 million that the multiplex would cost. So that's 63 million, 45 of it is anticipated to be the multiplex, as we speak today. We got some other issues. We got the police station, you know, you're talking, it's, you know, at least a $10-15 million issue for sure. That's coming up in the near future once we get this multiplex settled. That's you know, been talking about it for the last 6 months to a year. You know, we got to start somehow to get around to that as well. You know, and the reality is it took us 10 years to replace the multiplex. We're probably looking at that for, you know, the police as well. You know, just financially, I guess, is one issue. You know, where it's going to take 4 years to build the multiplex. So just to look at that. There's some other buildings mixed in there as well too. And I don't have the whole breakdown off the top of my head here. I don't know, you know. So that gives you just a general idea. It's police station and the rec facilities are the main, you know, issue that are very poor in that for those conditions. I hope I answered your question, Councillor Duplessis.
Yeah, you did. And I think too, what at the core of it is it's quality and function, right? Like what's the function that provides when the quality is there, and the idea that so at the other end of this, when something becomes so derelict that it's beyond very poor, what do we do?
So just follow up to Councillor Duplessis. So a couple of options. You know, if it's very poor, first thing that comes to mind is the facility be closed if it gets in very bad shape. You know, there's a few that come to mind. You know, specifically the Golden Hawk. It's you know, you can renovate them. I guess that's an option too. However, the cost to renovate that Golden Hawk over there would be astronomical. You know, in this day and age, and the unknowns and the asbestos and there could be lead. You know, that would be just astronomical. That cost of. So, from my chair, we've talked about it quite a bit. We've looked at it. It simply would not be a very good recommendation to even think about rehabbing that building at all. So you're talking about, you know, closing the facility. And I mean, that's one of the larger ones. So that's a fair one to talk about. When you get in the police station, it's very, you know, I think it's in a very poor condition. But however, we are making some investments in it. You know, we're fixing the windows here now. You know, I think in a few years, we're talking about the roof too, so we may have to make a decision there as well. Do we fix the roof? Do we leave it? You know, we got a new facility coming down the way. So there are decisions that have to be made as well with that too, as we go forward. So hope I answered your question there as well too. Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and I think it colors the fact that, you know, we're in the position here where we're either going to close buildings or we're going to put money into them with no increase in function.
And they're still going to be 67 years old if we do that. Deputy Mayor Quinn.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the numbers, Director Rao. They're eye-opening, to say the least. I'll join Councillor Johnson in inviting our friends in Fredericton, our MLAs, Savoie, Conroy, and Dawson, and joining us on this journey for a centralized recreational facility. I think we've crossed the line of no longer a want, but this is of a need, and perhaps an unfair question, Darren, excuse me, Director Rao. Are we day to day, week to week, or month to month in some of these red zone buildings that you've highlighted? Or like how close to end of cycle are we here, if that's even fair?
Yeah, to Councillor Deputy Mayor Quinn, certainly the Golden Hawk is one that, you know, I'd be concerned about. We've had some issues in the last number of years. You know, specifically the pool. I know that we brought an engineer to look at it. Was concerned there was some wall falling off and things like that. You know, we don't know what's underneath the walls and things like that. You know, in the basement underneath the pool, if anyone had the opportunity to tour that, it's in extremely poor shape. There should be another category for that one. So I'd say the Golden Hawk is a concern. You know, if anything does come up, you know, I'd be worried about that. As far as the other facilities, you know, the police station's not near there. The LBA is probably second to the Golden Hawk, you know, is concern of it. You know, the roof is leaking. We've tried fixing it here over the last number of years, you know, so, you know, they are getting old. They're very old facilities, so they're certainly a concern, is what I would say, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rao. I would make the note that councillors have spoken to calling on our friends in Fredericton. We also need a commitment from our friends in Ottawa. So I would just want to make sure we're fair in that we need both levels of government to commit. But I know the manager had a question as well.
Director, in your overview, you had the different circles, and you had in the 1 to 2 year, you have 9 items. Can you provide any more clarification for council, what items they might see in the next 12 months out of those 9, and sort of what order they expect to see them?
Sure. So like I mentioned before, the asset management plan, which is kind of a guiding document, is how do we do all these issues. We're anticipating that here by the end of the year. Following up on that, we're going to be working on a strategy, you know, like a long-term funding analysis that's based on the state of infrastructure. You know, you talk about council commitment, that's going to come up in budgets over the next couple of years. Capital plan, decision-making framework. I guess the last couple of years we've been working on that. We've been meeting together, coming up a risk-based approach for that. So we've already, you know, I've already started with that. We're going to continue with our data and condition assessment over the next couple of years. That's been going on for the last couple of years as well, too. So that's kind of behind-the-scenes stuff. One of the things that we are going to work on here by the new year is this asset management disposal policy. You know, we got some buildings out there that we got to look at. You know, we built some newer buildings. Let's get rid of some older stuff. I think the mayor mentioned it as well. Don't forget about that. You know, I think vehicles and all that stuff. Let's come up with a good strategy when something's at its lifespan. Let's make a decision on it and you know, move on from it, get rid of it, save some money, and put it into somewhere else. I guess so. Gives you a little overview of what we're looking for in the next year and a half here. Thanks.
Good. Thanks, Mr. Manager. Good question. And again, thank you both for the presentation tonight. We know that it's a beast, but it's something that needs to be done, that we're committed to, and it's great to have some you know, quantitative data now. That's a big, I'm sure, piece of continuing on, and it's great to have you with us, Ms. Allison, as the director mentioned, to have a dedicated resource whose, you know, role it is to help keep pushing this forward all the time. So thank you both. That is the last item on our public agenda this evening. We have one item in the committee of the whole, so I'll ask for a motion to revert, please. Councillor Ross Robinson, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. On the question, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So we will move into committee of the whole, which means we'll say goodbye to those joining us in public and on the live stream this evening. So thank you.